All right, welcome everybody to this special workshop that we're doing today to talk about resumes and how to make them better so that you get better results, job interviews, and that's the whole point of a resume, is to get your foot in the door so that you can get a resume. And so we're going to talk a lot about that today. So the purpose of this workshop is to better highlight the key strategies of writing a resume targeted for the job you are applying for. During this brief training, we will talk about how to prepare the job description, adapting your resume to match the job posting and company culture. And we'll also critique 2 resumes live. We may actually do a third if we have time. If we don't have time, we may do it afterwards, unless he doesn't show up. And then I'll probably won't do that on the recording. So, all right, well, thank you for that. All right, so let's just go ahead and get started. So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen because I want to show you, first of all, a job description. So I'll pull that up and okay, is everybody seeing my screen? It's still loading, so it's probably a white screen, but okay. All right, so as this pulls up the rest of the way, what I want to do, that I think this is very important, that a lot of people, when you're writing a resume, they write a resume that they use for the exact same job every single time, with very little to no adaptation based on the job description. When I'm helping somebody write a resume, the first thing I do is we take the job description. We don't even look at their resume first. We take the job description and we read through that job description and highlight everything that stands out to you. So what you'll see highlighted on this document is it stood out to me. And so these are just things that, let me make this bigger because it's probably hard to see. So this is what stood out to me as I read through this job description. And so you'll want to do that. Now there is a color code that I've used here. So the yellow is the keywords and the soft skills that they are asking for in this job. The green are the hard skills, the things that they say you need to have Microsoft Excel, or if they say something specific that you should know for the job, that's what is in green. And then job requirements such as experience, education, things like that are highlighted in blue. So one thing I want to point out, as you see this, there's a little bit of a heads up for culture here. Connecting health and wealth and come be part of remarkable. You will notice that if you read through this job description, you will actually see the word remarkable 5 times. That is actually a very key word in this job description. You want to show how remarkable you are on your resumes. That's a culture piece, but it's also something that applicant tracking systems this is going to be a word in the applicant tracking system. If it's listed 5 times, you need to put remarkable on your resume. I'm going to pause for a second because I said something that may or may not be too well known. Who can tell me what an applicant tracking system is? Go ahead and just unmute and tell us what an applicant tracking system is, if you know. And the ROI team can pitch in if they need to.
As far as I know, it is like an automated system software that you have to get through to actually have a person look at your stuff.
Right. Yep. So the computer filters your resume based on the qualifications, the keywords, and probably I would say 90% of resumes that are submitted online go through an applicant tracking system before they're even hit the desk of a person who could actually hire you. So making sure that you get these keywords that I highlight in yellow, or you highlight it, or however you're going to do that. So I'm going to quickly, I don't know if I'm going to read this whole thing, but I'm going to quickly go through and just, I'll read maybe the first couple paragraphs, because usually in a job description, the first couple paragraphs kind of give a lot of information about not just the job, but the culture. There's a lot of culture words and a lot of different things that usually you'll find in the first couple paragraphs. So the member services team is the heart and primary contact for members' inquiries regarding the administration of their health savings and reimbursement accounts. So that just basically says this is what you'll be doing. And so understanding that, you're going to ask yourself, how am I going to connect with this job? And other consumer-directed benefits. Team members with member services are valued and respected as they are equipped with the knowledge to assist not only members, but other health equity team members. So just those are just have some very important facts and things in there. The member services team is staffed 24/7, which allows members to call at their convenience. Service specialists consistently deliver, here it is again, remarkable solution-oriented customer service to effectively and efficiently resolve members' needs, answer their questions, and educate and engage each member to deepen their relationships with health equity and their products and services, and help members improve their health and wealth. So if you noticed up at the top, they have health and wealth here. They have health and wealth here. That's another one that is listed twice or multiple times. I guess it's actually listed more than twice. So as you read through these things, you want to catch these keywords that are repeated, that are kind of listed out. So remarkable, solution-oriented customer service. When they do lists, those are important things to watch for. So again, I made the comment here. It's mentioned on the slogan up top. That's a big part of the job there. In this job description, it says customer satisfaction and service assurance scores. Can somebody tell me what a common phrase on a resume is that you might include on your resume that would be a service assurance score? And again, just shout it out if you can think of one. There's probably actually a hint over here. Customer service rating. So I'll just go ahead and say it. So if you have like a customer service score, a customer service rating, or something listed on your resume, they use the term service assurance scores. You would switch customer service for service assurance. That's a terminology that is used with this company. All right, the next thing is right down here. There's the green is the skills. So they talk about you're going to be using a multiple channel chats, including phone, chat, and emails. So you need to be able to understand those things. And the ROI course teaches those. You get a lot of great experience with that. This sentence right here, if you speak passion, excellence, service, ambition, fun, we want to work with you. Now, you may or may not include some of that on your resume, but using fun words, using passion words, using excitement, things like that on a resume will help them see that you've got that culture. We're not talking about cover letters today, but a cover letter would be a perfect place to explain your passion, excellence, service, ambition, and fun. So being able to use that in a cover letter. So these are the things that you want to pull out from these job descriptions. So you will also see here what you'll be doing. So this is where some of the hard skills are going to come out again. Again, I've highlighted that in green. And then the requirements, what you will need to be successful. These are some of the things that you would need to be to apply for this job. And it talks about the training. If you've had any kind of training with with insurance or whatever, those are things that you would want to include on your resume, just to show that you have had some of this training. And then scrolling down a little bit further, again, work from home. Make sure if you haven't taken our course, take our class. If you have and you're certified, make sure you include that on your resume. And then down at the bottom, there's a little more bit of a culture sentence. This advice to you, this is actually a paragraph that's quoted exactly twice. So it's on the job description twice. Again, that's another flag that says pay attention to this. All right, so now let's go to the resume. Now that I've highlighted all of the information that I see that they want, that's when you can actually start your resume. So most of you probably already have a resume in place. And so I'm going to make, so what you'll do is you're not going to rewrite a brand new resume. You can take your other resume, or if you have like a master resume is what we like to call them, where you put absolutely everything you can think of on that resume. And then you can kind of pull from what you read in the job description and what is most applicable to your experience. So on this, you'll see that I've highlighted in the same colors the parts where I have included the keywords and the kind of the culture match, as well as the skills and the requirements. Okay, so you can see remarkable is the very first word I used. I'm a remarkable professional. And so that stands out to them. That tells them that you've caught their culture. You've caught what they're looking for. Effectively and efficiently resolving members' problems. That was a direct quote from the job description that I included into the sentence of the paragraph here. Connect health and wealth. So there's that other phrase that hits it in their slogan. That's, I'm talking their lingo. And then I speak passion, ambition, and fun. So I've included that as well. Here in the skills and qualifications, all of the green spots on the job description that you highlighted, you want to take as many of those as you have experience with and list them out. On a resume, you have 8 to 10 seconds. Once the resume gets into somebody's hands, you have about 8 to 10 seconds to win them on your resume. And these lists that kind of highlight, these are the things that I have experience with. It makes it easy for them to just quickly scan and say, okay, yeah, they've got email and written communication. Oh, they have a licensed insurance, they're a licensed insurance. All of these different things that were listed in the skills and qualifications, you want to list in this quick list. And then your experience, you want to list the experience that's applicable. If I did something for John's Financial Services that has nothing to do with health spending accounts or something like that, I probably am not going to list it. If I created a really efficient office diagram to make it so that things work more smoothly, that doesn't have anything to do with the healthcare benefits. And so I probably wouldn't list that as one of my accomplishments. If I were applying for a management position in an office, maybe that would be more applicable. And then, just the requirements for the job. These are just some of the things that they talked about that you need experience with. The time frame that you've worked shows that you've got 5 years experience like they talked about. And then the associate degree indicates that I have a higher education than the high school diploma, which is required. And then this is where I list the master or remote work professional certificate. So any questions so far about highlighting the job description and putting it on your resume there? I'm going to go ahead and stop share so I can see anybody here. So any questions so far? Okay, and you can put questions in the chat, and Jacob will either answer them, or he will let me know that there's a good question that needs to be discussed. So feel free to stop me at any time and say, hey, can you talk about that a little bit more? So yeah, so we've talked about the job description, we've talked about a sample targeted resume, and how important it is to make your resume fit that exact job description. It's like, these are the 5 things that they want in the job. This is what your resume does. It's got to match. And if it doesn't, then it doesn't make it through those applicant tracking systems, and you don't even get a chance. So, all right, so we are going to go ahead now and jump to one of our resumes that was submitted to me. Actually, I'm going to go to the job description first, just like I did. So let me pull that up and share the screen again. Okay, so this is a job description. The color coding is a little bit different here, because what I'm going to do, actually, let me narrow this, and I'm going to pull up the resume at the same time. Put this over there. Oh, there we go. Okay. Okay, so what I've done on these critiques, and I will send these critiques to the people who submitted them for a review. I've highlighted in green the things that they took that match the job description, words or things that they have on their resume that, if you look through the job description, is required. The yellow are things that are, they're kind of a match. They might be able to switch the words a little bit or something like that. And the red are missed opportunities. So this is kind of a pretty thorough review of this resume, and it's going to kind of tell them where they missed opportunities on the job description. So so if you look through this, I guess we don't have to go through the job description too much, just to show that there's a lot of room for improvement as far as what could be included on the job description. I am going to look through my comments here real quick before we go there. So again, the term ambulatory was used twice in the resume that was sent to me. And so I kind of, I made a note of that's a term that's probably a common term for jobs like this, but it was used twice. And so I kind of gave there's a little green there. Compliance is spelled out. So they included on their resume. So I highlighted kind of in yellow there, even though the comment makes it go red. They had listed EEOC on their resume, but in the job description, the C is spelled out, EEO compliance. And so I've indicated you'd want to spell that out, because that's something that the job description had listed specifically. All right, and then on here, so ability to live in the weeds as the HR function continues to develop competence. So I highlighted that just as a phrase that could be used either on the resume or in the cover letter. That just feels like a culture statement. And so you want to make, as you're reading through the job description, anything like that that stands out, make sure you're trying to include that into a culture connection with the company. And then uses diplomacy and tact inside and out of the company. That's another one that could be used in a cover letter to explain a little bit more. Discernment is another good topic for a cover letter, especially for an HR person. And then, let's see. Yes, okay, so in the resume, I'll refer back to this one here. Offers practical solutions versus academic or theory-bound canned solutions to business challenges. So here they talk about that they want the practical solutions versus the theory or educational piece. So are you able to do that? If you'll look on the resume, education is listed first. Most resumes, especially if you have a good high quality amount of experience, education almost always is at the bottom. That's just a common standard practice. If education is your most applicable experience, go ahead and put it up at the top. But for the most cases, education goes to the bottom, especially if you have good experience. And this statement on the job description, to me, says we want to see how your experience works more than your education. And so one of my comments here is start with the best education first. Experience supersedes educate, or best qualifications first. Your experience supersedes the education here. So I would move the whole education to the bottom. So if you notice that. So some of the other comments that I've included on this resume is address. Addresses are not very applicable anymore. It used to be that if you put an address on the resume, that told them, I live close enough to be able to drive to work. And where we're talking remote work, your address is not really applicable unless they don't hire in your state. So if you're applying for a job and you live in Florida, but this company doesn't hire in Florida, then you're probably going to miss out. But that's probably something they can also learn from your LinkedIn address. I would replace your address with your LinkedIn account. So then you have a phone number and an email address. Make sure your email address is professional. mudbogguntrucks@gmail.com is not a professional one unless that's your business. You know, if that's your business, then that's fine. But it's best to just have a first and last name if possible for your email account. The next thing is up here on this statement here. There were some terms, and I think we'll review them, but about employee training and the different things like that. Those terms were not used, and I'm trying to remember where they were. But you want to make sure that you're using, especially in this first paragraph, you want to address their culture, their terms, and that job. And if you don't, then you're missing out on some big information there. All right, for this comment here, this is over the 2002. So for an executive level resume, which this one is, it's acceptable to go back about 20 years. Normally, we tell people to keep your experience on your resume 10 to 15 years because age discrimination is real, and including dates of college or previous work that goes back too far can be a source of discrimination. So on this resume, it's okay to go to 2002, but on most other resumes, I would say leave the date off because you don't want to, 20 years ago, if you started working at 20 or 18 or whatever, you're close to 40. 40 is the protected age range. Next, we down here, so learning and development, staff development, orientation are the terms used in the job description. Those are the same terms that I would have used up here in this statement here. So this was a space where they could have used those terms based on the job description rather than the terms that was already listed on the resume. This comment here, Consistency, so make sure to start each bullet with an action verb. So if you notice, developed, participated, intensive. Intensive is not an action verb. You want to be consistent. Not all HR people are going to look at that, but our brains are going to recognize the consistency, and it's going to say this person is very organized and pays attention to detail. So you're going to want to make sure you look at that. Let's see, comment here, where were any of these results from this work? So developed employer branding, including social media strategy to promote employer value proposition and improve brand awareness. So what were the results? There could have been some results listed in this bullet point. And so you do not want to say what you did in the job. You want to say how well you did it. And this bullet point basically just said, this is what I did. It didn't say these are the results. This is how it changed the company. You want to make sure you're including that as well in your bullet points. So again, back to the action verbs a little bit, you'll notice developed. In this particular resume, you're going to see a lot of the developed. This is where you draw from a thesaurus. Get on your thesaurus and find a different word. Especially with the same job, you don't want to repeat words. You want to make sure that it's, that it's catching enough. If you're using the same words, it just feels boring. It feels like you didn't think through some of that. So come up with different terms so you're not repeating the same word over and over. Let's see. So again, on this particular bullet, what are the results? Don't just say what you did, say how well you did it. And then maintained is another word that gets used multiple times. So make sure that you're using a different word. Okay, let's see. So there's the word ambulatory. That was in the job description. So kudos to them for using that. So again, all of these green highlights were terms or words that were used in the job description. The yellow is somewhere where they could have improved it. They could have used a different word. They could have tied it to the job application a little bit better. So again, using their terms, I think we've got most of these comments addressed. So let me make sure. Okay, so there is a nice quantification in this particular job. You'll notice the numbers and the percentages. When you're listing your accomplishments, using those numbers, using those percentages, and don't spell out the numbers on a resume. You want to use the number itself because that stands out. When I'm scanning through a resume, if I see a number, it's the same size as capital letters, and so it basically screams at me, hey, look at me. So include numbers, but do the number instead of spelling it out. And let's see. So recruiting versus recruitment. So again, developed high volume recruitment projects. Recruiting is going to be in the applicant tracking system on this. Sometimes they'll put recruitment and recruiting and all of the different forms. But if they happen to just say, this is the word we want, recruitment, I would change recruiting to recruitment so that it matches what's on the job description. So if you notice that over here. So, and that's the first resume. Is there any questions? I'm going to pause the screen share for a minute just so we can. What have you learned so far? We've still got some time here and we do have another resume or two to review, but what have you learned so far? What are some of your takeaways?
I think Dom had a really good comment in the chat if you'd like to share that.
Okay. Yeah, let's hear from you, Dom.
I just said, I advise people, you talked about action, beginning a sentence with action verbs, those bullet points about a position. I advise people to use present tense action verbs instead of saying I did this. You talk about it in terms of these were the duty of the job. These were the duties of the job, and then you list them in present tense.
Okay. Yep, and I've heard a lot of different ways to, like if you have a job that's too present, you're still doing that for sure. For sure, that's one where you'd want to say I'm doing this, and keep it as a present tense. With previous jobs, I would say you could probably do either way, because really you're talking about what you've done, what you accomplished. You're talking about the duties, and so in that job, this is how you did that. So thank you for that feedback. So Carrie put in the comments, do you want to expound on that? Instead of what you did in the job, saying how well you did it?
I was just to say, I thought that was a good point that you brought up, because I think often it's easy to just be like, I did this, I did this, I did this. But I think those quantifying how well I did it make the difference.
Perfect.
So,
Yeah.
so for example, you might, and tell me if this is a valid example, Trenton, you might say something like, I increased the profit of this product by X%. Is that something you might include?
Yes. Yeah. And instead of saying I performed sales duties and sold to customers, that's the generic version of I increased sales profits by such and such percent by doing such and such. Most people, when they apply for these jobs, they're just putting their job description, and every single person that's applying for that job most likely qualifies for that job. And they've done that in the past. They've done that work. But if they say I operated a cash register, you could have been off on your till every single day and got fired after 2 weeks because you kept losing money. Versus I operated a cash register and consistently had a zero over short balance 95% of the time. That tells me better that they've done the job good versus I can punch buttons on a cash register and scan products and take money and try to give change. So that's it. It's important to include those in the thing. So let's see. So, and then Tony talks about the applicant tracking system. Did you want to share anything about that, or?
Unmute myself. No, I found it really interesting. For some of us who haven't had to do resumes for a long time, I didn't realize that there was an applicant tracking system out there. The other thing I found interesting was just not to use your physical address and the dates and stuff like that. So I appreciated learning that today.
Yeah. And I think I didn't mention the physical address thing. People get nervous about that nowadays because of safety issues. And so that's another reason it's okay to leave your physical address off your resume. So, all right. And just making sure I didn't miss anything else. Okay, so let's go ahead and jump to the next resume. And open those up. Okay. Okay, so this next one, here's the job description. So I kind of did the same thing where I highlighted in green things that they did include on their resume. And you'll see when we get over to the resume where those are. In yellow are things that were sort of addressed but could have been changed by the terminology or something like that. And green was the things that they nailed. And so you can see again that there's a lot of room for improvement, a lot of red on there. And comments on this job description. So culture statement, enabling smart people to live like rich people ever since. So that what this company does is they it's like a coupon gathering system. And so it's helping people, enabling smart people to live like rich people. So that's kind of their phrase that they use a lot. The director makes sure to include data entry. Let's see, data director. Let's see. Okay, yeah. So she had a role as a data director, and you'll see that on her resume. But they talk about data entry. I don't think I saw any data entry listed on the resume. And so that's kind of what I was pointing out there. And then social media specialist, excellent communicator. So there were a lot of, so that one's a green one. And I was just kind of pointing out that she's got a lot of really good communication listed on that particular job. And so I just kind of pointed that out on the job description. Another thing, word used in resume, but the meaning is different. Organization. So she used organization on the resume. So that might actually catch in the applicant tracking system, but it doesn't talk about her organization skills. It talks about an organization. So it is a different word. You might slip it through the applicant tracking system on that one, but I just wanted to point that out, that she probably it would be a good idea to use organization in the terms of organizing your office and organizing your jobs and tasks and stuff. So that's the job description. So let's jump over to the resume. Again, I've already highlighted the address thing. Let's see, juggling multiple responsibilities. So adept at managing multiple projects. So you can see how this is her terminology, but this is what was listed in the job description. So using that term instead of what was listed. Again, customer service, sales, detail oriented, that's all there. But let's see, so like Salesforce experience. So Microsoft Office Suite or something like that. If this person has done sales before, has used data for customers, there's a good chance they've used Salesforce, but I could not see Salesforce listed anywhere on the resume. And so when she's listing Microsoft Office or something like that, using what programs you know, even if you haven't used Salesforce, but you used Zoho, put Zoho on there because that will tell them that you know how to use a customer service management software. So be specific on that. Again, problem solving, just there's a lot of examples of words they could have used differently to improve the connection with the resume. And then purchasing and budgeting, the job description did talk about billing experience. This kind of hits on accounting, but it doesn't hit the billing piece. And so again, there's a one that I'd want to point out. Okay, and I think most of this resume is that sort of thing. So again, we talk about the action words. Management of, that's used the term managed. Those are you want to be consistent in that. How many company policies did they create? So they talked about participated in policy development. What policies? How many policies? How did that change the culture of the company? Those are the things that you want to include. Again, going back to that, not what you did, but how well you did the job. What difference did you make in that company? That's what needs to be included in these bullet points. Again, just the green here, what softwares, using word processing and other software, list it out. List what software you have experience with. And then again, consistency using the action words, and some call it, so this is another point. So there's this person has an associate of applied science, digital marketing specialist. If the job is asking for like an associate's degree or a high school diploma, I would definitely list this top one. This bottom one, I would only list because if you didn't complete the degree and it's asking for a degree, I wouldn't include it at all. I would include just this first one, just because it avoids well, why didn't you finish? Why didn't you finish that degree? If it's asking for a high school diploma, listing some college is probably okay. I would just list the college itself though, and maybe list the credits or whatever, and then just talk about the different courses that you took that are especially applicable to a job that you're applying for. So I've attended North Idaho College. Some of the courses completed were blah, 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 listing those out so that the employer can say, hey, I've got some education on this subject, and we only require a high school diploma. So some college is better than a high school diploma. So if that makes sense there. So that's pretty much everything on this one. There is a lot more detail. Again, these will be sent to the people who sent me the resume so that they can have that clarity. Any comments or questions? And I do have time to kind of jump into the other one and just kind of show show something that I think would be important to know. Any comments or questions first? Scroll down. Okay.
Now I've got one, Trenton.
Okay, go ahead, Jacob.
So how do you know whether to use 1 page or 2 pages worth of resume?
That's a great question. I haven't commented on either of these. Right now, they are both kind of executive level. My rule of thumb that I've always taught people is executive level, it's okay to do 2. A 1-page resume, if done correctly, can suffice. If you're more entry level, 1 page is probably all you need. And it's not a bad thing if you're entry level and you do a 2-page resume, but 1 to 2 pages is always the key. And the other resume that I may look at, he also sent me a CV, which is a lot more detail. My brain just suddenly lost the term of what
Curriculum vitae.
Curriculum vitae. I don't know why I couldn't think of that. But he sent me a CV as well as a resume. And he's high level, has a PhD as well. So none of these are really entry level resumes. I did show the entry level resume at the beginning when I was talking about the content, but so a curriculum vitae can be 10 pages or more possibly, depending on what you've been able to accomplish. And it's usually used in academics. So if you're trying to be a professor at a university or in the medical field, sometimes in federal government, they like to see everything. And so a curriculum vitae works there. But the shorter and more potent and powerful, the better, in my opinion. Again, you have 8 to 10 seconds to sell yourself on a resume once you get your resume into somebody's hands. And if they don't see what they are looking for right away, if there's too many words, if it's too bulky, if it's paragraphs, it's really hard to see those things. And so they're going to say, oh, set this aside, it's no. Or they'll see everything that they're quickly looking for, and they'll put it in the yes pile. I'm going to look at this better later. So let's see. So all right. So I'm going to quickly just jump over to this other resume because and I'm not going to review it like I did the others. I just want to point a couple things out. So let me share my screen again. Okay, so I swear I went in and highlighted all of the requirements here, so I might just jump to the, I must not have saved it or something. So let me just go to his resume. And this is the non-CV one. Oh, there we go. That's the highlighted one. Okay. And there's the resume. Okay, so, and this one has a few things that I want to bring up as well. So if you notice, there's a picture on this resume. 5-10 years ago, we told every single person, do not ever put a picture on your resume. It's become a little more acceptable nowadays just because of LinkedIn, Facebook, social media. If you Google my name and my location, you're going to find a picture of me somewhere. And so we used to tell people never put a picture on your resume because of the age discrimination possibilities. So I would still recommend that on a resume. So I would tell this person, I would tell Patrick, you don't have to have a picture on your resume because, you know, that's just not something that we still recommend. But there are other things on here that I would, his experience goes back pretty far on this resume. And I would tell him if he is applying for a position that is typically more for younger people, do not include the 1995s, the 1982s, the years that were 40 years ago, because that highlights how the age of your age. And so it's easy for a company to say, you know what, we want somebody that's got some more experience with the new information and the new technology and the new processes and stuff like that. It's easy for a company to say this person's going to be outdated because they have been around since this time. And so that's an important part of a resume, is to include the, like we talked about earlier, entry level 10 years, executive level, try to keep it at 20. Now, again, this guy works in federal government. Most federal applications want to go clear back until wherever. There's probably a little bit less discrimination in that than I would say in the private world. And so he's probably okay using this. It is a 3-page resume. I would tell him to pare down a resume down to 2 pages. His CV is about 7 pages long. Now, the thing about this is he's got a lot of really good experience, and he's done really well at quantifying his experience. But as I read through the job description, there weren't a lot of ties to that job description. I would make sure that whatever he's pulling out of his CV, which has everything on it, is very tied to, and this job description is about, their product is like a device for military that can help you find the soldiers, the tracking devices that they would wear so that you know where your soldiers are. And it's a sales position. And so I would focus on that sort of thing with the experience. And he could probably cut down a lot of space on this resume just to focus on the specific product and specific details of this job. And so there's probably some more detailed critique I could give on that, but this one added a little bit more to the others. And so I think we have covered everything that I'd like to cover today. Jacob mentioned that that we could look at his resume real quick for maybe a little more entry level. Jacob just graduated from BYU, and so he's kind of entering the career space. We will probably, if you need to go, you're welcome to go because we're pretty much done. But we'll stick around and look at his resume. So if you want to stick around, we'll keep the recording going just as an added bonus. And so we'll start there. So Jacob, if you want, if you have it up, do you want to share your screen and we can talk about it?
Yeah, gladly. Give me just a second to pull it up.
All right, perfect.
You guys see that?
If you can zoom in a little, that'd be good.
How's that?
Okay. All right, so yeah, and I think I've looked at I know I've looked at your resume because I was your program coordinator when you took our class. So so with Jacob, like I mentioned, he is a recent graduate from Brigham Young University. And I had told him about this particular thing before, where his education right now is probably one of the most applicable experience that he has. He does have some work experience, some of it's short-term, some of it's intern type work. And so using the education first is probably good for Jacob. After about a year or so, especially he's working with us now, has a good first career type job, and he will probably want to move that education down to the bottom again, where most resumes you will find the education. And he's got his current job listed. He just started in May, and that's when he did his internship. And so he's still working with us. He has a different role. So you'll be able to see that when you look at his resume. But again, you can kind of see that his other work is kind of, it's more entry level. It's, not related to business or career or education or something like that. These were jobs that he probably had during college. And so they are a lot less applicable to the jobs that he's doing now or he would be applying for. And so again, those come after all of the other experience. And then anything else that he's listed, he's got some volunteer experience. And because he's young, I always tell people if you're really young and you've got recent education, put the date on there, because that is the opposite of the age discrimination piece. A lot of people do look for young people. You don't want that company to be discriminating, but letting them know that you are young is okay to do on a resume. If you have a degree and you got that degree when you're older, put the date on there, because that kind of might help as well. The best place to shine to get the job is the interview, and the resume, you definitely want to get that interview with the resume. And then once you get that interview, that's when you go in and you knock it out of the park. Go to your local workforce development offices, whatever state you're in. Go there and ask them, hey, could I take an interview class, or could you give me a mock interview? That's the best way to practice for interviews, is just going somewhere, asking people to give you a practice interview. We do have a previous professional development workshop where we talked about interviews, a couple of them actually. And so if you go to our website, on our professional development playlist, there are a couple that are down the list quite a ways about job interviews. So if you want to learn a little bit more about that, here in Utah, the Department of Workforce Services does a fantastic job with both resumes and interviews and other resources to help you get your jobs that you need. So I think that's all we will cover today. So are there any other questions? So thank you very much. And you can go and we appreciate your time today.